Okay, so thank you, Johnny, for bringing me back here. Hope you bring me back more often. It's so nice to be here around friends in a friendly environment. Thank you, Bruce and Jessica, for opening up their building to us. It's
Out
a
of
delight.
respect for Rabbi Wolbe, let us all turn our phones off to hear him.
Wow.
Wise words of wisdom.
See,
I'm not trying to be rude. I have 15 minutes and I have to.
Guys, everybody look, power on.
What's funny is that
Just turn my phone off.
every time
I want to hear what Rabbi Wolbe
every time I hear a
has to say.
speaker say that, I'm envious. That please turn off all your phones. I can never do it.
Oh, I have no such.
Compunctions.
But how are you gonna record it, Johnny? You gotta record it. You gotta record it.
What do you think he's doing with his iPad?
Well, no, iPad's not recording. The phone's recording.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And the phone flipped over.
My bigger
That's
problem
right,
is
so-
how am I gonna video us listening to you? That's
Open your phone, but don't look
no,
at it.
I want to hear what Rabbi Wolbe has.
Okay, so what I am going to talk about today is what we've been talking about in the Parsha for the past, 4 or 5 weeks. So if you analyze the Holy Book, the Bible, the Jewish Bible, the Old Testament, the Torah, you'll notice that it's broken down into 5 separate books. We all know them. Genesis, and now we're up to Exodus. And there's a remarkable departure from the kind of narrative and dialogue and story that we have in the first book to the second book. First book we talk about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph's brothers. We kind of learn about an idea on one hand and a family on the other hand. The idea, obviously, is that of God. Abraham emerges in a pagan world, and he presents a brand new idea that basically changes the course of human history. Abraham, the great innovator, is the one who set the world on the path that we are today. Abraham comes 3,800 years ago, and the entire world is pagan. And the system of morality is very, very different than what we basically accept as being basic societal norms accepted across every culture. Abraham is the one who comes up in a face of with tremendous headwinds, when everyone is telling him you're a lunatic, and he teaches the world that there's just one invisible God who has power over everything, who is endowing man with a mission and responsibility to do right and wrong, and the decisions that we make have an impact for eternity. That's the idea that Abraham sets in motion. And today, if you look back in retrospect, you see basically that the entire world adopted some variant of this worldview that Abraham began. Abraham is promised in Genesis that his children are going to be the people of God, the nation of God, the nation that's going to be entrusted with the vital mission of bringing morality to the world, the vital mission of being God's ambassadors to the world, of being the moral guardians of humanity. That's us, we're Jews. God has promised that, but remember, you read Genesis, you don't meet a people, it's a family. It's a family, it's an idea, and it's a promise. Abraham is also told, as a prerequisite for this nation that he's going to be the father of, he's also told that you should know that your kids are going to be foreigners in a foreign land. So that's the first question that we're probably we have to ask ourselves when we look at the Exodus. It seems very clear that enslavement is a prerequisite for the Jewish nation. Us to be here as Jews, right, and to have this mission that we've been telling the whole world about, the mission of morality, the mission of God, right? Our collective mission that we still do today, whether we like it or not. Right? Even Jews that are distant from Judaism are fulfilling the Jewish mission, what we call Tikkun Olam, making the world a better place. Right? That had to happen only after we were subjugated to enslavement. Why? Why can't we just have Abraham, okay, you're a great guy, you're teaching the world about God, your kids are going to be the nation, booyah, make the kids the nation. Why does it have to be that the kids are going to descend to Egypt, they're going to be enslaved, they're going to be tormented, they're going to be persecuted, they're going to be marginalized, and then they'll emerge, and then they'll have Mount Sinai and split in the sea and everything, and Moses and the wander in the desert, go back to Israel, Jewish people. Why does it have to be like that? And it's clear from the Torah that's the only way it works. Question number 1. Question number 2, we open up the book of Exodus. And what do you see? very rapid descent from a privileged family in Egypt, right? The family of Joseph. Joseph was royalty in Egypt. Very rapidly, they descend into being slaves. Slaves that are doing backbreaking work. Slaves that, if you miss your quota of bricks, your baby replaces the brick in the building. Just unimaginable suffering that the Jewish people suffered. We go a little further. Read about Moses. God tells Moses, burning bush, the whole story. Don't take the Jews out. And Moses comes to Pharaoh. The whole negotiation. 10 plagues, and a theme that we go to again and again is that God tells Moses, go to Pharaoh. I hardened his heart. Remember those words? Pharaoh, his capacity for free will, which is the basic underlying quality of a human, is the ability to choose one way or the other, that was suspended. Right? You look at this week's Parsha. The Jewish people already left. The Jewish people are out. God tells Moses, you should know that I am going to harden Pharaoh's heart and compel him to chase after you. So this idea of Pharaoh losing his free will is a tremendous philosophical problem. Right? Jewish philosophy mandates that people do things based on their own decisions. Thus, you can only reward or punish someone based upon the fact, the premise, that they had the choice to do it or not. That makes a lot of sense, you know? If the kid doesn't have a choice whether or not he does X, Y, or Z, well, then it doesn't make sense to punish him or reward them. No consequences should exist without choice. Is that right? Makes sense? What do you say, Abraham?
Makes sense.
Makes sense, right? Suddenly we see Pharaoh's choice is suspended. Why is Pharaoh's choice suspended? Why would God suddenly, in the middle of this whole Exodus story, tell Pharaoh, you are not going to let the Jews go? And he gives them a plague, and the hail comes, and Pharaoh says, okay, I want to let them go, I want to let them go. The plague stops. Pharaoh says, I'm not going to do it. Why is he not going to do it? Why didn't the people go? His free will was suspended. Why would God change the framework of the world that he built, and suddenly, for whatever reason, tell Pharaoh, okay, you no longer have the ability to choose. I'm going to compel you to force the Jews to stay here and to have the great miracles of the plagues and the ensuing chase that Pharaoh undergoes to destroy the people. Any other question, guys? What do you guys say? I feel these questions are not compelling yet. Anybody?
I don't know the answer.
How do you want to hear the answer? Give me the answer.
No, I don't know the answer, so I don't want to say anything.
Let's ask the question this way, okay? Let's look at the story from everyone's familiar with the story, right? Everyone? Is anyone not familiar with the story? Good, everyone's familiar with the story. You have 10 plagues. The last plague is the death of the firstborn. The Jews leave Egypt, and then Pharaoh comes to chase them. After the 5th plague, Pharaoh was committed to letting the Jewish people go. He would have let them go. God forced him, compelled him to change his mind, to keep the Jews enslaved in order to enable the last 5 plagues to happen. Let me ask you a question. Exactly. Thank you. Someone thinks this is a compelling question. It's a good question. The plagues are there to force the Jewish people to go. Pharaoh wants to let the people go. Mazal tov, let's let them go, and we can leave. Why would we lengthen this whole process to have 5 more plagues when Pharaoh already is readily agreeable to let Jewish people go?
To give the Jews more time to gather their things.
Oh, okay, maybe.
Because
That's a good answer.
Even after
Get your affairs in order.
even after all the plagues, there was still a part of the Jewish people that wanted to stay. So, and that's after all of the plagues. Imagine if they only had half of their portion, then a lot more people would have stayed.
Why?
But I'm telling you. So
I understand what you're saying, but why?
Why?
So you're saying the
because
plagues?
They were slaves.
Okay, but
their brains.
Oh,
they would have much rather
go with what they know.
Right, exactly.
And what
Know that they,
The unknown.
That they were in
yeah,
safe
they
hands.
got- yeah.
It's like, you know, when you have
Like lack of faith. I mean,
when you
like-
have someone who's like in charge of your paycheck, you're
Right,
not gonna go
absolutely.
off onto your own.
Exactly.
So if you
That's
still
exactly the
think
example.
that Pharaoh and the Egyptians have their affairs in order, then you'll say, I'll take this instead of going on the dangerous journey of with Moses into the unknown. Okay, I like that. So you're saying really it was about the Jewish people, not about Pharaoh. Okay, let me introduce you another verse here. This says it multiple times in the story. Multiple times in the story it says, God tells Moses, I am going to bring Pharaoh to his knees. I'm going to humble him and the entire Egyptian people so that the Egyptians know that I am God. Now we're throwing in a third element here. We're saying it's not just important about the Jews should know. We want the Egyptians to know. Who cares about the Egyptians? The Egyptians are being vanquished. The Egyptians are being destroyed, obliterated, exterminated, gotten rid of. Why do we need why is it important that the Egyptians know that the Almighty is God?
I think maybe it will pass on from, how they wrote history. They want it all.
That the Egyptians should record it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's actually a problem because we don't have that many recorded testimonies of the Egyptians means extant, existing, like archaeological. So we have some stuff like the Ipu War Papyrus that says, there's blood everywhere, and that's dated to the time. But we don't have a whole lot. And in fact, we see a pattern in archaeology throughout history is that we don't have a lot of people admitting defeat. We don't have exactly, it wasn't exactly the popular notion of people saying, we just got destroyed. Why don't we write all about it and detail our embarrassing defeat so future generations could verify that this is indeed true. Even
Maybe spread the word around for all the living people in the world. That
this,
God is God and don't mess with the.
Okay, maybe, but remember this idea that we have today of trying to record history accurately. Remember, the first historian is Herodotus 2,500 years ago. So that's 800 years after the Exodus. The first time that we see in history someone with a mission of trying to organize and write and preserve the stories that happen for future generations. We don't have that really. We have lots of remains that detail great victories and stuff like that, but not many that talk about defeat. Like, for example, in the British Museum in England, you find from the conquest of Sancherib. We all know, everyone heard the term the 10 lost tribes? Anyone heard that? 10 lost tribes. So the Jewish people, they after the death of Solomon, they split basically into two nations. There was the northern kingdom of Israel, southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom was comprised of 10 tribes, 10 of the 12. Sancherib, the Assyrians, they came and they destroyed the 10 tribes. They didn't destroy them, they actually relocated them, and in their place they put the Samaritans. So all these names that we know, like the Samaritans, they came to Israel when the 10 tribes that are now lost were sent out. So Sancherib writes about that. He also made a siege around Jerusalem. So we have, in the British Museum today, if you go to England, you could see it, the recorded, I don't know in what form, probably in clay or whatever, cuneiform, of Sancherib. I am Sancherib and I have vanquished the northern kingdom of Israel. And I don't know the exact details, you can Google it. And I am now besieging Jerusalem because he came south. After he went north, he came south. What actually happened in history was that he didn't capture Jerusalem. We know that because you open up the Jewish Bible, it tells the whole story. He captured the northern kingdom of Israel, and he failed on the doorstep of Jerusalem. So we don't have any right. But he doesn't seem to take that great care and detail in letting us know, 2,800 years later, oh, by the way, I failed miserably at capturing Jerusalem. He talks about his plans and his ambitions and his siege of Jerusalem, but not his ultimate conquest of Jerusalem. And that he does not go out in great detail to let us know about his defeat. Either way, so we cannot argue that maybe we can. I think it's still open that the reason why the Egyptians had to know that God is God was for them to record it, because they didn't record it, and that wasn't the way things were done. So these questions are all good questions to kind of open up this discussion of what is really the purpose of the story. Like, looking back, Torah, the word Torah, we have a few Israelis here. What does the word Torah mean? Hora'ah. What does that mean? In teaching or instruction. That's what it means, because it's a book of instructions. The stories and narratives and dialogues of the Torah, that is also instructive. You know, the Torah could have told us a lot of details about Moses from the age of 20 to the age of 80. You know, obviously the story of Moses, I'm sure, was compelling. He was a great guy, Moses. You know, how come the Torah tells us nothing about what happened to Moses from the age of 20 to the age of 80? Or why the Torah tells us nothing about Abraham from the age of 0 to the age of 75?
Not relevant.
It's not instructive. The Torah deemed certain parts of the narrative as instructive, and others were not instructive. The ones that were instructive were included, and the ones that were not instructive were disincluded, not included. We have an entire half of a book, like 10% of the Torah is talking about the Exodus. Details, right? Obviously, there's instructions. We have so much. Look, Shmos, Ve'er, Rabo, B'Shalach, Yisro, Mishpatim, all these parashiot, these sections of the Torah, telling us the whole story. There's obviously a lesson for us. There's a lesson for us, and it's also important for us to know that Pharaoh and the Egyptians, they knew that God was in charge. How do we unknot or disentangle this problem? So, to your answers. Let's go back to our first question. Excuse me. Our first question was, why is it important? Why is it a prerequisite for the Jewish nation to exist? Why is it a prerequisite that they have to be enslaved? God tells Abraham, "You'll be my nation. Your kids will be my nation. Your progeny will be the Jewish people." But before that, they'll be in Egypt for hundreds of years, and they'll be tormented, and then they'll leave. Why is that important? So I think the answer is like this. The entire process of whatever happened to the Jews up to when they were formed as a nation on the foot of Mount Sinai, right? Up to that point was God educating the Jewish people. Right? You know, any kind of success in any field, it could be in tennis, it could be in law, it could be in whatever, right? There's always a process of preparation, of development, of reaching the point where the greatness could shine. Of course, we all know that. There's the education of the individual. There's also the education of a nation. The Jewish people are going to fill the most vital mission in all of human history, in all of world history. And that is bringing God to the world. That's our mission. A tiny nation, 0.02% of the population, infinitesimally insignificant. We're nothing. We're a speck. We should be forgotten about before. Like we don't make even a little tiny little tremble, a little smidgen on the demographic scale. We're nothing. Yet we're everything. Right? Why? Because that's what God had planned for us, and God set us up that we're going to be doing that. And we see now that we are. This nation should be the kingdom of priests and a holy nation. God's people in the world, they have to be prepared for it. They have to be educated for it. They have to be molded and formed in order to be that nation. Part of that is being slaves. No, whoa, wait a minute. If we're going to be like the people of the world, we can be a slave? It's a good question. How does being a slave contribute to enabling us to be God's nation? Doesn't make any sense. You would think a slave is marginalized. A slave, what about being a slave or being a nation of slaves? How is that going to prepare us for being God's people?
It humbles us.
Okay, I like that.
What was the
Makes
answer?
you appreciate being free. I guess God wanted people of Israel to know what it is to be enslaved before they are free people and spread the word of God. That they needed to feel it on their own.
Okay, these are all good answers. What else? What else? What's the number? Well, you said free. So what's the number one characteristic of a slave? Is that they're not free,
Yes.
right? They're limited. They're controlled. What they do, what they eat, what they sleep, when they sleep, if they sleep, anything their day is planned out for them, right? They have no say in
Then when you're free, you feel like you can do everything.
Okay, well let's talk about the slave, right?
They're free in their beliefs.
You're trying to force this as being in a spiritual discussion. Maybe, okay, but the number one characteristic of a slave, of a subjected or subjugated individual or a nation, is that they don't have control. They don't have a say in the matter. Now, if you were to look at the Torah is the instruction book for this great nation. What do you find more than anything else in the Torah? You find restrictions. More than anything else.
How to deal with restrictions?
More than anything else. And you say, wait a minute. Why, if we're going to let our wings spread, like why so many restrictions? Why so many limitations? So I think perhaps.
Just preparing us for we're sure going to subject to this juice.
Well, okay, but I think like this. I think that a man, humanity, individuals, a nation, in order for them to capitalize on their great potential, they have to learn self-control. They have to be grounded. They have to be harnessed. They can't just be doing whatever they want and being the subject of the whimsicals and temptations and whatever. Thus, the mitzvahs are constantly telling us, this you can't do, this you can't do. Is it so important to God if I eat milk and meat? Really? This is what God, creator of the cosmos, is worried about? That's a question that we could ask. However, clearly the idea of being limited, of being told, no, this you cannot do, that makes you a more mature person. It makes you a greater person. It makes you someone who has more control over your life. Thus, I think we could say that in order for us to, like you said, to really have control and to not be drawn or pulled or compelled to just live life simply, right? We had to learn about the idea of us not being in control, of us being told what to do, of us being severely limited, being subjected, being subjugated, being oppressed, right? What does a slave think? I'm not in control of my destiny. I don't have a say in the matter. My master is in control of what I do. That's what a slave is. Now, what happens at the Exodus? So that's the Jewish people. What happens at the Exodus? Is it just you open all the doors? What's the first thing that happens after the Exodus? Very first thing, they get the Torah. What God tells them is that I'm releasing you from this sort of bondage, and I'm putting you in somewhat of a different bondage. Well, obviously it's not the same.
Well, they went wild and built the golden calf.
We'll get to that in a second. That's a very good. That's the ultimate conclusion of our discussion. Maybe if we get there, probably not.
Well, it's all in my head.
Right. Once they had this mentality of I'm not in control, I need guidance, I don't have a say, God takes that and says, okay, this attitude, but now it's not to the Egyptians, now it's to God. And now we kind of transfer the elite. We don't change who we are as a nation. We're still slaves. We're still subjected. We still don't have a say in our matter. We're still being guided. But that guidance, that relationship that we have with the Master, that frees us to do whatever we want, whatever we need to do as a nation. God tells Abraham, your kids are going to be, a nation's going to change the world. But the only way for you to do that is if you're not like everyone else. You're harnessed, you're grounded, you're being guided by me. That's the only way to do it. How do I take a nation of people that are not at all attuned or aware or capable of being guided? They're going to be slaves. They'll be slaves in Egypt, and as a slave, you're forced to learn that. Once you learn that, okay, now Exodus. What happens at the Exodus? Now we're transferring that allegiance, that affinity, that association, that reliance that you had to the Egyptians. Now you have to realize that was just for practice. Now here's the real deal. Okay, now, says God, if the people are going to transfer their allegiance from Pharaoh to me, what has to happen? They have to realize that Pharaoh is a fallacy. That sounds nice. Pharaoh is nothing. Pharaoh is completely weak. The Egyptians are just little what are they called? Little puppets that I'm playing with. Thus, the plagues what were the plagues about? It was to teach Pharaoh. Because who sees that? Who sees Pharaoh brought to his knees? The Jewish people. Every one of the plagues, the Jewish people realized, whoa, suddenly Pharaoh is being humbled and is being brought to his knees and is being totally in control of the ultimate power. Thus, for the Jewish people to make this transition in affiliation, in association, in reliance from Pharaoh to God, they have to see two things. They have to see God's dominance, and they also have to see how weak Pharaoh is and how beholden Pharaoh is to the ultimate God. Thus, the 10 plagues were not about getting the Jews out. God could have made a single miracle, plucked the Jewish people out, apparate them, nice Harry Potter term, apparate them all the way to Israel. Mazal tov. What's the problem? The problem is that in order for this to actually happen, the Jews have to see the Egyptians totally brought to their knees. Pharaoh says, "Oh, I want to let them go." No. I'm going to suspend your free will. This has to happen. Now, if you look at the 10 plagues, right? First 3 plagues. The blood, the Nile turns to blood. The frogs emerge from the ground, from the water, and the lice emerges from the ground. All 3 of them are subterranean, are underneath the ground, like below. The next 3 are death of the animals, swarms of the beasts, and boils in the people. That's at surface level, ground level. The next 3, hail from the sky, locusts from the sky, right? Locusts fly, we think of locusts as, that they swarm, they cover and lastly, darkness from the sky, right? This is all part of education. The Jewish people learn, God is in control of what's below, what's around us, and what's above us. Additionally, every single one of the plagues coincided with one of the Egyptian gods. Thus, the Jewish people realized, the Egyptians worship the Nile, God turns the Nile into water, right? The Egyptians, they had a frog god, that was the god of, fertility or something like that. God uses that. Every one of the plagues was an additional demonstration to the Jews that what you think is the power of the Egyptian god, no. They're really in the hands of the Almighty. They're really in the hands of the ultimate. Thus, we could say that this Exodus story, when you look back, you see, what do you see? Right? We see the descent into exile or into enslavement. We see a nation being taught a very important principle. We see a tremendous suspension of the laws of nature. We see a transcendental plagues that are just directed at the people. Right? You have a cup of water. The Egyptian neighbor drinks it, it's blood. You drink it, it's water. The people are learning about God. It's clear, it's evident. The Jewish people could see, it's not dark for them. For the Egyptians, they can't see. It's like when you look at the, when they have like the, God forbid, when they have like Joplin, Missouri, and there's a big tornado that comes. Remember those? So you see this one house that somehow survived. Like the entire neighborhood is raised with a Z, and there's one house that somehow just avoided the tornado. That's what it was like. You see hail raining down in Egypt, and the Jewish house is spared, and his neighbors are Egyptians, both sides, all 4 corners, and their houses are just in shambles. And you look a little further down, there's a Jewish house. It's in perfect shape. And you look around the whole country, it's like that. Every Jewish house is spared. Every Egyptian house is in shambles. Like, whoa! What do the people say? They say, "Oh my God, I'm being convinced. I'm learning about faith. I see the power is coalesced in the hands of this one power, and this power knows what's going on, knows who is who, and is in control of even the Egyptian gods. Even their powers are beholden to him. Because look, God's employing the ultimate God, the Almighty, is employing the quote unquote gods with the undercase G for use of his desired outcomes. Thus, this entire process is preparing the Jewish people for being God's nation. Not only that, the Ramban, the great commentator on the Torah, he says that when we look back at our history, we'll look back at the Exodus story. He says, this Exodus story was such a concentrated mass of faith building tools that even today, 3,300 years ago, we look back and we remember the stories, we see the stories, we learn about the stories, we read about the stories, and we can nourish our spiritual life. Back to what Josh was saying, our spiritual life can be enriched by these stories. And he gives a great example. He says, you know, when God wants, he wants a nation. God wanted our nation. What did he do? He says, all the laws of nature are out. You know, plagues, 10 plagues. Ultimately, the ultimate plague of death of the firstborn, the Exodus, splitting the sea. All these things are nothing for God. We think it's a big deal. You know, Mount Sinai experience. Everyone has prophecy. Like a total suspension of the rules. 40 years in the desert. How they eat? What they eat in the desert? You know what they ate? They went to the local pizza joint. What they eat?
Yes.
Manna fell down from heaven for an entire nation. They drank water out of a rock. Like, this was the most supernatural transcendental time in history. And when we look back at this rush of faith-building realities that happened to the people, today we nourish our faith through that as well.
How many people were wandering in the desert?
603,500 adult males between the age of 20 and 60. So you did the math. 603,500 adult males between the age of 20 and 60.
You talk really fast.
Sorry, 603,500 adult males between the age of 20 and 60.
603.
That's right.
603,000.
Okay, that's
500, 303,500. Now, you would assume that there's a comparable amount of females, because typically men die earlier than women, because men die in things called war and bungee jumping. So typically you would assume there's at least a comparable amount of women, plus children and the elderly. I've seen estimates as much as 3 million people. I don't think it's 3 million people. I think it's probably less. I think it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1.5 million or something like that. That's probably the number we're looking at. But it's an enormous, enormous mass of people. And remember, nice, cool little tidbit. The book itself, the Torah itself, enumerates all these miracles that were experienced by millions of people over generations. It wasn't like, oh, JC walked on water and no one saw it and it was written down 80 years later. No, here it says miracles happened for millions of people over 40 years. Every day they got food, besides for Shabbat. Every day they got food from manna from the heaven. Every single day for 40 years for millions of people. And those very same people got the book written by Moses that said, this is what happened. You know? So the people themselves, if it did not happen to them, if they didn't get, they would say, let's look at the new bestseller, the Bible. No, Bible. It says that I left Egypt 40 years ago. What? Yeah. And we drank from water from a rock, and we drank manna from the heaven, and it's all those detail in great detail, names of the peoples, names of places that 44 places that they stayed, that they stopped along the way, and they got the book. There's no way to falsify the story. It's not possible. If a future generation got the book, then the book itself is disproven. If that generation got the book and those events didn't happen, then they would reject the book. No one would observe the Shabbat. No one would not eat leavened bread on Passover. No one would fulfill all the laws of the Shabbat if they knew it was bogus. Clearly, the people that received the book believed it as being divine. Thus, the mitzvahs that may seem bizarre, like don't mix wool and linen in your clothing, doesn't make any sense to any human brain, they would follow that because they say, hey, it's from God. And we know it's true because it's in the book, and the book outlines exactly what happened. We were there. We were by Mount Sinai, and we saw the split in the sea. We are those people, and we got the book. Right? Now, these stories today, when we do that exercise, we say, oh, wow, God did suspend the laws of nature, and our grandparents saw it. And we let that sink in. Says the Ramban, that's going to impact us. You know, my grandfather used to always say that this story, these experiences, inspiration that happened to the millions of people, it's so hot that if we have to take a thermos. He says you take a thermos, and there's this thermos that holds that heat alive, and you open it up, and you feel the same heat that existed then. The idea being that we could integrate this inspiration that happened many thousands of years ago, and that could enrich our lives with spiritual nourishment and the faith. Now, getting into your question here. What happened merely 50 days after the Exodus? I'm sorry, 90 days, 3 months after the Exodus. Right? The amount of time that to return an item with a receipt to the store. Like, what happened?
He knows.
Huh? I know, yeah, I know. 89 days. Bring it back.
Golden calf.
They made the golden calf. And what did they say? They made a calf and said, "This is your God, O Israel, that took you out of the land of Egypt." What? You just had the most remarkable faith-building experiences ever. And in fact, us today, if we have faith, it's because of those events. And it's because our contemplation of those events and how those events penetrated the Jewish psyche and consciousness for millennia. You were there. Those people themselves were there. And it was only 3 months earlier. How was it possible that these experiences did not make an impact on those people? And I'll expand your question that you asked. A couple months after that, they have the story of the spies. Right? Remember, not the spies, the spies. Right? Moses sent spies to Israel. They come back and they start questioning God's ability to help the Jews conquer. Like, what? You just saw God splitting the sea, God, the whole wonderful experience of Mount Sinai, the template. You saw things that should not make you question whether or not God could vanquish 31 kings of the land of Canaan. What happened? I'll expand your question even further. Pharaoh. Right? Pharaoh, after the first and second plague, says to his sorcerers, "Oh, they can make blood? Huh, we could do the same thing." They pour a cup of water, and it's blood. They have to do it. "Oh, you got frogs? We got frogs too." And he's frogs. What happened after the third plague? Lice. Anyone knows?
Couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it. Why couldn't they do it? Because it was too small. If it's smaller than a barley, the size of a barley, then the sorcerers have no power over it. So Moses is clearly not a sorcerer anymore. So what does Pharaoh's sorcerers say to him? Etzba Elohimi. This is the finger of God. This is not some sort of fancy schmancy EBGB abracadabra magical nonsense. This is real. And his people say that. Does that impact Pharaoh? Absolutely not. Let's fast forward all the way to the plagues. What Moses tells Pharaoh, by the way, at midnight or around midnight, all firstborn in Egypt are going to die. They're not going to be sick beforehand. They're not going to get flu. Nothing. At midnight, before midnight, they'll be alive. After midnight, they'll be dead. We're talking about thousands upon thousands of people. Right? He was forewarned that's going to happen. Not only that, the firstborn of the animals. Not dogs and pets that you have, but like cows. Much more palatable. Oh, okay, whatever. Firstborn of every animal is going to die. Right? That's what Moses tells him. Now Pharaoh, he's got some firstborns of his own. He's sure he has some firstborn animals of his own. So what happens? Moses tells him what's going to happen. What happened? It says that in the middle of the night, all the animals die, and Pharaoh woke up. Pharaoh woke up. So Rashi tells us one word, mimitato. What does mimitato?
His bed.
From his bed. And why is it important for Rashi to tell us that he was sleeping, or that he was from his bed? Maybe he was on the couch, was he in the pool? Why is it important to tell us that Pharaoh was in his bed?
He went to sleep.
He went to sleep!
He didn't care.
He didn't believe it! What do you mean? Moses just came and did 9 miracles, and he told you, by the way, all the firstborn, they're all going to die. What did Pharaoh do? Did it impact him? Was he scared? Oh, he went to sleep. Oh, it's a regular night. 8:30. I got a big busy day tomorrow. I'm going to... How do you go to sleep? How do you go to sleep when Moses tells you, and Moses has 100% accuracy. Everything that he said happened exactly the way he said it. Right? You told Moses, I want the frogs gone tomorrow. They were gone tomorrow. Not today, not the day after, tomorrow. Everything that he says comes out. Pharaoh doesn't make an impact. How is it possible that some Jews and Pharaoh were able to reject such clearly evident, such clearly obvious miracles and question the legitimacy of Moses? How is it possible that people are afforded the same opportunity to have inspiration? You know, the same miracles, the same plagues, the same everything. It's the same. Right? On one hand, some people could use that and harness that and build a faith profile that is going to sustain the Jewish people for eternity, on one hand. On the other hand, you have some Jews. Now, it's important to note, we think of the Jews serving the golden calf. We think it's everyone, right? That's what we think. Why is that? Why do we think that it's everyone? Because we watch the movie instead of reading the book, right?
The family of Aaron didn't.
Well, the family of Aaron didn't. Okay, who else didn't? How many people serve the golden calf? Dun, dun, dun. Anybody knows?
No, Charleston Heston didn't.
I know, you watched the movie, exactly.
He didn't.
It's actually, that movie is one of the few examples of when the movie's actually longer than the book. The
But
movie's
I think
longer
that-
than the book.
But
because
the
the
movie
movie's-
was, I think, more authentic than the new Exodus, right? They made it
I didn't see the new
into,
Exodus, but from what I heard, the new Exodus is even worse.
It's just
But there are a few flagrant mistakes made in the Charlton Heston movie in 1956, Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments. Number one was, and this is probably the most flagrant, is that
Moses was wearing a Rolex.
was that Moses and Moses alone had the Mount Sinai. Moses goes up to the mountain, and the Jewish people start going to serve the golden calf. What actually happened, and you don't have to be a brilliant genius to figure this out. All you have to do is read the story of the Mount Sinai, of the Sinai experience. Read it at number one in Exodus, and it's repeated again in Deuteronomy. And why is it repeated in Deuteronomy? Because it's very important, right? The Deuteronomy repeats a lot of things because Deuteronomy is the book of Deuteronomy happens over a very short period of time. It's basically, the book of Deuteronomy is basically Moses' last will and testament. It's a couple of days before Moses is about to die, and he gives a very, very long speech that basically spans the entire book of Deuteronomy. So in that speech, he recounts some of the events that happened in the past 40 years. Amongst those events are the events of Mount Sinai. So he repeats it because obviously it's a very important event. Read the accounts and tell me who experienced it. The entire nation heard. The entire nation saw. It says this again and again. Everyone experienced it. Everyone. It wasn't just Moses. Everyone. This was the only time in human history that people were elevated to prophecy on a national scale. This is the only time that it happened.
There's a painting when you see the Ten Commandments, and you see Moses, and the whole people of Israel behind. They all see it.
Yeah, they see it, they hear it. It describes it in very graphic detail. What they experienced, because it was not something like they, the Midrash, once you open the Midrash, says that they all died of just, they couldn't handle it, that they were resuscitated, they were blown away. Like, the Midrash gives much more detail on what were the mechanics of what happened. But even if you just read the text, you don't have to, don't even remember Rashi, nothing. Read what happened. It's an experience unlike anything we've ever experienced. Prophecy, and the entire nation sees everything and sees things that a prophet should only a prophet should see. But in the movie it's presented as just Moses goes up and he just leads people and then he comes back down and so that's the most flagrant of misdeeds in the presentation of that movie. We talk about this is an idea that's one that repeat often. We talk about just if you were to compare the evidence that we have for the veracity of our religion, and you compare that with other religions. Veracity means the truthness or the historicity or the accuracy. Yeah, of our religion. If you compare that to other religions, every religion follows a very similar path. It is a prophet, or a prophet is a fancy word to say someone gets a communication from God, right? Some sort of revelation or experience. It could be Joseph Smith in the mountains of New York, and he meets the angels, and the angel gives him the golden tablets that are written in Reformed Egyptian. He translates that as the Book of Mormon. Right? That's the narrative for the founding of the Mormon religion. It could be Muhammad it could be Paul, it could be any founder of any religion has this experience that he later on uses to preach whatever doctrine that he's preaching, right? That's how every religion found it. Made sense, Dana?
Yeah. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Our religion, the Jewish religion, is the only one that has a narrative of public or national revelation. Why? Because it wasn't just Moses or Aaron or Phineas or any one of the individuals that experienced prophecy to form the religion. It was everyone. The miracles in Egypt happened to everyone. It wasn't just Moses, and he convinced everyone. Moses didn't have to do any convincing, right? The people saw, and the Torah itself talks about it. The Torah says, listen, what happened to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai will never be replicated again, nor will anyone ever claim that it happened to them. The Torah tells you, not only is this event so amazing that it'll never happen again, but not only that, no one will ever claim that it happened again. Oh, hanishma kadavar hazeh. It'll never. No, you won't even hear such a thing being said. Why not? Why? Maybe someone will make up. How does the Torah know that no one will make up a religion and claim to have national revelation? How does the Torah know that? The answer is because it's not possible. You can't make up a story and have it have any legs to say that there were 1 million people that saw something that they didn't indeed see. That's not possible. You won't even hear it. If us together, us 12 people, whatever we are here, right? If we decide to form a religion, someone's counting. If we decide to form a religion, I think it's 13. If we decide to form a religion, right? Could we convince 1 million people, or could we tell even a story that 1 million people experience something? It's not possible. There's no way to do it, right? Thus, this episode, I think, if we just appreciate what it means, especially in contrast to the other great religions, right? It gives us, like we said, it bolsters our faith. We live from that experience. The second thing was that how many people participated in the Golden Calf? It was only 3,000 people. So it's 0.5% of the nation participated in that. So it means 1 out of every 200 people that left Egypt participated in, 1 out of every 200 males, the females that participated at all. No, it's actually it's a pattern that we see again and again in Jewish history, that heresy and rebellion is almost always exclusively by the men. Yes, it's true. It's true. It's true. The profile.
So what's the answer?
To which question? So the answer like this. So I think that the answer like this. I think that the lesson is that no matter how much inspiration someone has, someone could have. I have a friend of mine who doesn't believe in anything. Doesn't believe in God. Doesn't believe in Mount Sinai. No, that's nonsense. There's no power. Nothing. Everything gets the Big Bang and the survival of the fittest, and that's it. No, there's no one in control. It's all random, right? So he says, but if there's a prophet and who you watch with me to the Buffalo Bayou, and he splits the bayou, then I'll believe. That's what he says.
Bayou?
Well, the body of water that is in the bayou.
Oh, okay.
If someone does that, I'll believe. That's what he says. And the truth is that I'm willing to bet that even if someone did that, he wouldn't believe. Because no matter how much inspiration someone has, in order for it to penetrate your heart and change who you are, and change even things that you don't want to be changed, there's this chasm, right? There's this leap that has to happen. There's this integration process that is absolutely necessary in order for it to be successful. Pharaoh saw everything that Moses saw, and everything the entire Jewish people. It didn't make an impact on him. The people that committed the sin of the golden calf, and later the ones of the spies, they had the experience, they had the inspiration, it didn't penetrate. Why didn't it penetrate? That's the critical question. How is it possible that some people took this and it guided them throughout the rest of their lives, but also throughout the rest of the lives of all of Judaism. Right? We today, right? We have so many mitzvahs. You know, if you go to a Shabbat meal, you'll notice that in the Kiddush, in the blessing said before the meal, we say the word Zecher liyetziat Mitzrayim. You know that? What does that mean? As a remembrance for the Exodus of Egypt. That's right. Every Shabbat we remember the Exodus. If you celebrate Rosh Hashanah, we say in the Kiddush, Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Yom Kippur, Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Sukkot, Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Shmini Atzeret Simchat Torah, Pesach, Zecher L'Yetziat, all of them. Shavuot, Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Tefillin, right? If you were to open up a tefillin that are worn by Jewish males every day, you open up and say, what does it say? Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. A mezuzah on every Jewish door, what does it say in there? Yetziat Mitzrayim, right? We have a mitzvah to say the Shema prayer every morning and every evening. What's the last thing that we say in the Shema prayer? Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why do we have this obsession of constantly invoking the Exodus? Why is it so central to our religion? It's everywhere you go, every morning, every night, with the tefillin, every Shabbat, every holiday. Why is it so important? Every door you walk in, you see the Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why is it so important? The idea being because this barrage of faith-building inspiration that happened is still feeding us today. Thus, when I pass a mezuzah, I can either pass a piece of scroll, surrounded by, a piece of plastic that's stuck onto the door and not even notice it, or I can relive the experience at the Exodus. I had a great story. We did some construction in our house 2 weeks ago. So we had a construction guy, and this guy's very talented. So I said to him, listen, I have a problem because I have a playroom. I converted my garage into a playroom. Problem with it is that I have one of those swinging doors. It's a swinging, like a door that opens both, I think it's called a saloon door. I don't know what's called, a double door, whatever. So it doesn't, opens both ways. So on the side of the door, there's no place to put a mezuzah, and hit the mezuzah. Because the door is basically, so I had a problem. So I said to him, listen, I want you to do me a favor. I gave him like a mezuzah case. I say, I want you to cut a hole in the actual door, in the actual side of the door. What's called the
Frame.
The frame of the door, and then we'll put it in, and then you'll still be. That's what So he made the outline of it, and fine. And he said he was going to do it the next day. The next day I come there, and I see that he actually did it, but he actually took the mezuzah plastic that I had given to him, and he drilled it in. So now I have just a piece of plastic on my mezuzah. So I took it out, I put the scroll in it, I covered it, I said the blessing, and I put it up. But a mezuzah could be just a piece of plastic. That's what he's like. Yeah, okay, I'll put it up for them. Whatever. It's kind of like we had a baby here in Sugarland. We had the hospital in Sugarland. So they said to us in the hospital, are you going to circumcise? I say, of course, And they're like, okay, we'll do it right now. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it like in 8 days with the Res Mohel. It's like,
Like there was a picture on Facebook or something. It was a tallis on a tablecloth, like a tablecloth.
Yeah.
And it's like, when maid does no one tell us this?
Yeah, exactly. She's like, oh, but yeah. So when we say mezuzah, it can mean, it can mean that it can have some meaning to us. We could be reliving Exodus, or it could be nothing. Like I think matzah. Everyone knows about matzah. Everyone knows Passover. Even the Jews most distant from Judaism knows about Passover. Why? Because in every supermarket in America there's a Passover aisle.
No, it's
Every
not
single
their
one.
reason.
Right? At least everyone knows about it. And then you look at these matzah, and you're like, someone does the math. Hey, matzah is very expensive. It's like, so there was once this guy in Israel said, hey, I did the math, and it's 35 cents a bite. It's that expensive, like the handmade matzah. I still think it's hilarious. Like he measured it by the bite. I think it's probably the really big bites. But so you're eating matzah on Passover. What are you doing? You could either be experiencing the Exodus. You're at the foot of the mountain, or you see the blood, the cup turned into blood. You could be reliving it, or you can be eating crackers. It's the same thing. It's the same matzah. For someone, they take the inspiration to heart, they think about, they're mindful about what's going on, they integrate it into themselves, they relive a spiritual experience. The other people, it's just very surface, you know? I think even the great miracles that happened at Mount Sinai, the great miracles that happened. Mount Sinai, to Pharaoh didn't make an impact. To some Jews, 3,000 of them, 0.5% of them, 1 every 200 adult males, didn't make an impact. Why? They didn't integrate it. So I want to share one cute, awesome, amazing idea. If you look at the very last sentence of last week's Parsha, last week's Parsha, we finished the Parshas Bo, talked about the Exodus, right? So we have the previous Parsha is 7 of the 10 plagues, the last 3 plagues. We're out of Egypt, and the very last verse, it says, wear tefillin. So I always say, hey, listen, you know, the editors of the Torah said, hey, listen, we have another slot here for one more verse. Why don't we put in like another mitzvah? Okay, that's a good idea. And the editors agree. They take a hat, they flip it over, they put in 613 scraps of paper. Each one of them, it says the name of a mitzvah. Shake it really good. The guy closes his eyes. Let's pull out tefillin. Okay, let's incorporate. Is that what it really is about? Is that what the selection process? Of course not. All right. The Torah clearly wants to teach us a lesson when it says, after the whole Exodus story, it gives us the mitzvah of tefillin. I think we could say like this. There's a simple and there's a deeper meaning. The simple idea is like this. In order for someone to actualize, to concretize, to integrate an idea, a spiritual idea into their actual life, make it have an impact on them, they have to do an action. They have to reinforce it by a mitzvah. Thus the Torah is telling you, wearing tefillin, and we said tefillin is very much linked to the Exodus. That's what it says. The Exodus is in the scrolls. When you do something mindfully, that bridges this vast chasm that separates the mind from the heart. But on a deeper level. Tefillin, if you look at a tefillin, you actually see 2 different kinds of tefillin. There's one that's worn on the head, that's 4 compartments. Each compartment has a different scroll. There's one that's on the arm, only 1 compartment, and only 1 scroll. You say, well, is it 1 tefillin? Is it 2 tefillins? Well, just wear tefillin. Why do you have to wear 2 different ones? Tefillin symbolizes the idea of making a link between our head, our brains, what we know, what we understand, and our hearts, what we feel, what we do. That's what tefillin symbolizes. The Torah is telling you here. We just finished 3 or 4 sections on Exodus. There's value here. There's lessons here that can change your life. The very last sentence of the parsha is tefillin. But it will change your life contingent on whether or not you learn the lesson of tefillin. Contingent on whether or not you integrate this into your practice. You do something about it. You take an action. You reinforce the idea. You bridge this gap between the mind and the body. If you do that, then the whole thing was worth it. Otherwise, you read it, it's a nice story, you sit back, you say, you flip through, oh, what a lovely story. Maybe we'll just watch the movie. I don't know. Maybe we'll read the book. You read through it, and it could totally not. To you, you're eating crackers, and your mezuzah is just a piece of plastic. That's what it is, Or take the lesson of tefillin. Get inspired. What are you going to do about it? You guys have the opportunity or the tremendous merit to have a Torah class, and hopefully the Torah classes are good and inspiring.
What about women that don't wear tefillin?
What about them?
Well, is there a connection between that?
Okay, that's a good question. Why don't women wear tefillin? That's a very good question. So there's a few different angles to that. First of all, women are not necessarily prohibited from wearing tefillin. It's a little bit different. The reason why women don't wear tefillin is because in order to wear tefillin, the laws of tefillin mandate that you have to have what's called a clean body. Without getting into the details.
We don't have that.
Well,
we have to have what?
I said a clean body. That's what it says. Without getting into details, women would not be able to wear it all the time. So that's why. But the lesson of tefillin they need as much as anyone. It's, you know, the mitzvah of tefillin, the insight of tefillin, the symbolism of tefillin. That's for that you know, they have to learn that as well, of course. You know, I think it's probably somewhat more important for men, as we know. You know, men are the ones who screwed up by the golden calf because they didn't integrate the lesson of tefillin. Women didn't. So we could probably argue that women don't need it as much as men do.
Technically, women could do it just when they're cleaning.
So technically, yeah. Even though there's a lot of discussion about it, it's a very controversial matter. Technically, yes. The Talmud itself says that the rabbis were very wary of women wearing tefillin. So I will say technically, but even you know, from the Talmudic perspective, from thousands of years ago.
All because of Eve.
Yeah, she screwed up for everyone. Adam screwed up for us too, by the way.
Well, he did, but he was
Yeah.
kind of seduced by
We're all suffering from those mistakes. So that's one idea. So we have you. I was saying, we have opportunities for inspiration. We have it with the Torah classes. We have it through our lives. You know, I think I once did this exercise with this group. I know I did it with a talk group. We'll do it again. You know, you kind of everyone knows that texting while driving is dangerous. Everyone knows that. But last time I did this exercise, I asked, is there anyone here who was never tested while they drove, and no one was able to raise their hand? No one. So once again, you see a disconnect between
I only started when I came to Houston.
Well, okay.
Yeah, in Israel you get tickets.
Yeah, I think that's right. But so once again, we see a disconnect between what we know, that texting is dangerous, you're in danger in your life, and what we do. It's a clear example of this separation between what we know, what we understand, what makes sense, and what we do. Like, it's insane. Like, why would someone do something that's harmful? It doesn't make any sense. It's
You know that it's wrong, and we still do that.
that's the point. But how do you do something that's
Emotionally crippled.
right? We're insane, really. Like, we're doing things that we know are dangerous. Why would we do that? Because Ruach Shtut, okay, nice. Because there is a disconnect between our minds and our hearts. I once saw. I mentioned this also last time. I have these memories. Like, I don't forget what I teach to which group. This is like years and years and years ago. No, not that many years. I've only been in Houston for 3 years. But probably 2 years ago, I told you guys that I saw once on Facebook. Someone had sent a picture of like really fancy sports car that was completely under like a truck, and it was really bad. And the caption was, they found his cell phone still in his hand, but they found his head in the back seat.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
So I was thinking, ooh, everyone's cringing, right? I didn't post it on Facebook. Don't look at me.
No, it's about a movie.
So, if someone sees that post, what do they immediately say? I ain't texting while driving. Right?
I am not.
I am not texting while. I'm not going to in the future text while driving. Amen. Thank you. I aren't. I isn't. Me isn't.
You isn't. I aren't.
Me was.
So, but what happens over time? That you forget, exactly. So we have two problems. We have number one, the problem that we don't necessarily translate the inspiration into something that we could do, like a mitzvah. You know, we talk about mitzvah. We talk about that great thermos. Every time we do a mitzvah, we are supposed to have the meaning behind it. You eat the matzah, you're supposed to relive it. It's the mindfulness of the mitzvah that gives the inspiration. We have to repeat it again and again. You say, why? Rabbi, well, we pray 3 times a day, and we're tefillin every day. How is it meaningful? The point is that it might not be meaningful every time, but we need constant reminders, because just like the story of the guy reading that Facebook post, right, over time you're going to forget it, and you're not going to remember it. So, to conclude.
Makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
No, a lot of logic in the Bible.
So, to conclude, when we look back at these stories, we learn a lot. If we examine it a little bit deeper, we ask questions. Why is it important for us to be subjugated to enslavement? Why is that prerequisite? Well, we need to be formed. We're being formed as a nation. We're being taught the lessons of faith. Right? Some people didn't learn it. Well, why didn't they learn it? They didn't integrate it into their hearts. They didn't take to heart the lesson of the tefillin, of making that, of bridging that gap between our mind
I thought of
and
a
our.
different theory.
Go ahead.
You said that.
Please proceed.
Sorry. You said that God hardened Pharaoh's heart
Yes,
intentionally.
that's right.
So I was thinking maybe there was supposed to be a small percentage that God intentionally made them not observe all they did in order to make them an example for what happens to them if they don't apply.
Now, but you know, if you actually examine the words "harden their heart," what did we say? Remember, what do we say? What's a tefillin? It's a link between our mind and our heart, right? Pharaoh in his brains realized that God is in control, totally. God hardened his heart. He made that the brains couldn't enter the heart because it was hard. There's no room to penetrate, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, I'm saying, but it means it's.
No, but my theory was that maybe he did this on purpose also to a small percentage of the people of Israel in order to make them.
Yeah,
an
but remember,
example.
what's the motivation? It means our question was, what's God's motivation? We said, well, the motivation was because this has to be done to build the nation. There would be no motivation to have it done to the people of Israel. Just those people of Israel must have hardened their hearts on their own or refused to, allow it to make that impact.
Well.
Either way, I think that maybe
enslaved
that.
them for 400 years.
Oh, well, that's right, but they still didn't learn the lesson. I think that the takeaway lesson for us is like this. Throughout the course of our lives, of course, in our lives, in our Jewish lives and our Jewish lessons and learnings, there's going to be opportunities for growth, for inspiration, for becoming a better person, becoming a better friend, a better spouse. Opportunities to expand who we are as individuals, right? We're gonna have inspirations. You're gonna go to class once and you're gonna say, that's nice. You're a class of relationships, and you learn about how to be a better husband or a better friend, right? It's an opportunity. You to choose if you're gonna be like Pharaoh and just your heart will be hard and it won't impact you, or you're gonna take the lesson of tefillin and you say, hey, I'm gonna make sure that this is gonna find some way to seep it into my bones. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to become a different person. I'm going to live my life in a different way as a result of this inspiration. And if we do that, I think, we'll become better people, we'll become happier people. It's the guaranteed way to improve your life is become a better person. So Torah wants from us, and that's what we should hope for ourselves. Is it going to be easy? No one said it's going to be easy. Just change is never easy. Is it worth it?
Of course it is.
I think it is. Yeah. Anyhow, thanks a lot, guys. Tons of fun as usual. Please invite me back.
Of course.
Donnie,
Every Monday.
make sure he comes back.
Thank you.
Back, guys.
Okay, I appreciate that, guys.
A few announcements. Can I make a few